Ashes to ashes.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. In today's video, I want to do a lore breakdown on the character Paul Phoenix. Paul Phoenix was one of the first characters I ever did a lore breakdown for. One thing that I will read from the wiki starting off this video, it says, making his debut in original Tekken in 1994. He is one of 4 characters, the others being Yoshimitsu, Heihachi, and Nina, to appear in every installment of the main series. When I was doing the breakdown for Nina, a lot of people were saying, wait, wasn't Kuma in every single Tekken? Wasn't King in every single Tekken? And yes, the titles, the names themselves may have been in every single Tekken, but the characters were not. That's what really makes these 4 characters so special. It's not a clone, it's not a brother, it's not a son, it's none of that. It's the character being in Tekken 1 and then that same exact character, person, being in Tekken 7. Jumping a little bit deeper into Paul Phoenix's story. Paul is a short-tempered and judo practitioner who repeatedly enters the series King of the Iron Fist tournaments in hopes of winning the prize money, all while developing rivalries with Kazuya Mishima and an automorphized fighting bear Kuma. Paul Phoenix is short-tempered. This is probably how the character started, but I think this side of the character really diminished. There hasn't been any instance over the past 3-4 games where I could say this character has shown some kind of short-tempered. But on the part about him developing rivalries with Kazuya, I think that is pretty fascinating because Kazuya is going to be the main person, the main character villain in Tekken 8. And I would love to see Paul Phoenix and a lot of other characters actually get to step to Kazuya. What I really love about the past Tekken games is that the Mishimas and the rest of the roster was a lot closer. When is the last time we saw Kazuya and Paul Phoenix interact? Kazuya and Eddie, Kazuya and whoever interact with one another. This is one of the core elements to Tekken that I think was lost over time. And I'm really hoping Tekken 8 can tie all this stuff back together. He is the only guy to ever fight Kazuya to a draw, and the only one to ever beat Jin Kazama in a tournament match. The second being Harang. Now I think this aspect of the character was retconned in a lot of ways because we saw many different variations of this story now. We saw what happened in Tekken 3, we saw what happened in Tekken Bloodline. In Tekken Bloodline, these 2 characters never met. King was the person who had all the glory. But one thing that Tekken Bloodline did actually say is that
Had it not been for the power of the Devil Gene, Paul Phoenix would have defeated your father.
And I know a lot of people was upset with how Paul Phoenix was portrayed in Tekken Bloodline, but I think the reason why he lost is not because of the character being weak or not because the character not being strong enough. I think it simply comes down to labbing the matchup.
Pay close attention not only to what wins the fight, but also what loses it.
King was this mysterious person who showed up in the tournament. No one knew who he was, not even Heihachi, up until the very end of the tournament.
My people have recently discovered that King is not who we thought him to be.
So, you don't know who that is?
Paul Phoenix, he may know the original King, but this new King is a different breed, is a different person. And this kind of goes back to the idea that there is only 4 characters that has been in every single Tekken. In Tekken 2, this is where the story in the game versus what happens in Tekken Bloodline is vastly different from one another. In Tekken 2, the video game, Paul Phoenix was on his way to face Kazuya again after being defeated in Tekken 1, only to end up having to forfeit and be replaced by Heihachi after getting stuck in a traffic jam as a result of a multi-car collision on the expressway. So in Tekken 2, Paul Phoenix did not make it to the match on time. In Tekken Bloodline, Paul Phoenix was there. He was present when Kazuya and Heihachi was fighting each other. There was no traffic jam. He was simply a bystander. And I really like what Tekken Bloodline did better because one, it gives us that first-hand experience. Paul Phoenix being there, he witnessing the unbelievable, the unthinkable. He sees how Kazuya is sort of growing into this monster. Because think about it, he fought Kazuya in Tekken 1. And then in Tekken 2, he was there again to witness the battle. But the second time, seeing how much more vicious he was the second time around, that instilled fear into Paul Phoenix. I really like how Tekken Bloodline tweaked the story, and also they made it a little bit more understandable, because when you have these convoluted things like, oh, a car crash so they couldn't make it, it really gets confusing. We talked about Tekken Bloodline and how that is a version of Tekken 3, but in the actual Tekken 3 game, Paul Phoenix goes undefeated throughout the entire King of the Iron Fist tournament in Tekken 3, leaving victorious after defeating the opposite fighters including Kuma, Jin, and the God of Fighting, Ogre. You can see here how the story is just scribbled. Even the wiki contradicts itself. You have a tweet here from Harada saying that Jin was not a part of the tournament. And then you have another part here saying that Jin was a part of the tournament and he was beat up by Paul Phoenix. And then you have another variations of the story that says Jin was in the tournament, but he beat King, who beat Paul Phoenix, and then he beat Ogre. You see how the story can be so confusing and it's so difficult to remember. One thing that I really would appreciate they do in Tekken 8, if they filtered the story. If they went all the way back to Tekken 1, I know it's kind of difficult to do, but if they went back to Tekken 1 and they gave us clear and concise story for everything that happened from Tekken 1 to Tekken 8. I'm not really talking about the side characters, I'm more so focusing on the King of the Iron Fist tournament. Give us a clear path as to who did what, who beat who, so we could better follow the narrative of the story. Because when you focus on Paul Phoenix' story alone, and that's the thing, we only talked about Tekken 1, 2, and 3. You can see how there's so many different variations of the same event. And it's madness. It's really madness. Breaking down the story of Paul Phoenix, I understand why the community does not know the story. After defeating True Ogre, Jin was declared the winner. Paul Phoenix felt cheated, and this cheated bitterness really is where the character changed, flipped on its head. We'll see what they decide to do in Tekken Bloodline if there's a season 2, because like I said, how that story played out is very different from how the games played out. As a result, by Tekken 4, Paul's dojo has gone out of business due to lack of students, and he ends up a homeless alcoholic. And that cheated bitterness didn't just affect Paul Phoenix mentally, but it affected him like his career, his livelihood. Going from being characterized as having a short temper to a homeless alcoholic, and then in later games, a joke character. You can see how Paul Phoenix is changing as these games go on. You can see his character, and usually people want character development. People want these characters to be dynamic and shift and whatnot. In Tekken 4 is where Paul Phoenix faces the second Kuma. The first Kuma simply dies of old age. Heihachi trained the second Kuma, and the second Kuma was just as powerful as the first. Paul Phoenix defeated Kuma in Tekken 3, but Kuma got revenged in Tekken 4 and defeated Paul Phoenix. After that, Paul Phoenix started to get kind of serious once more. He adopts a new training regimen and gets revenge against Kuma in Tekken 5. But that fight with Kuma leaves him exhausted. He's forced to drop out the competition because he just could not carry on. Again departing the tournament penniless and already burdened by his increasing debt, he wastes no time in entering the King of the Iron Fist Tournament 6 in hopes of finally easing his financial troubles. This time he believes assembling a team would increase his chances of victory, so he joins his old friend martial law and boxer Steve Fox. While they did well in the tournament, Paul and Law ended up being paired against each other.
Let's get started!
Leave it to me, just as we planned.
Not over. Yeah.
and they both fought to a draw. As a result, they were unable to claim the top prize. When you talk about Paul Phoenix and martial law, they both had this scheme of working together. But somewhere along the tournament, they was paired up against one another. One of them should have just stepped down so their friend could keep going. Because if you already have an alliance, if you already have an agreement to work together, why would you go all out and end up knocking each other out of the tournament? There's a lot of things like this in Tekken that just does not make sense, and I get why people dogpile onto the franchise. In Tekken 7, Paul Phoenix doesn't really accomplish much. He has a battle with Panda, but I don't even know if that battle is canon, because in Tekken 7, the King of the Iron Fist tournament does not officially happen. Heihachi fakes his death and he calls the tournament off. So whether or not that even happens, I don't know. But if it is canon, in Tekken 7, Paul Phoenix beats up Panda as in is booed by the crowd and runs away crying. If you talk about how his story can continue in Tekken 8, there's a lot of different paths this character can go down. He hit his lowest of lows, but in Tekken 6, you can see he's trying to fight back. You can see he's rallying with his allies to try to make more of himself. His story has always been centered around making money, getting money from the tournaments. But Paul Phoenix, I really don't feel like that's the root of what this character is. It seems like he really just wants the glory of being at the top. And somewhere down the line, the developers changed that to it being more so about money. Paul Phoenix is a character that can go anywhere. We often see him paired up with martial law in the Pachinko slot machines that's released like every year. Anything is possible. But like I said before, one thing that they definitely need to do is focus. Whatever decisions they make, they need to make sure it's clear and concise, and it's something that the players would enjoy and appreciate. But that's going to be it. That's my breakdown of Paul Phoenix. I know it got a little bit crazy at times, but this is literally how the story is presented to us. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, go to the Tekken Lore Explained playlist. I have a lot more breakdowns of other characters in there, and I'm definitely planning on to do some of the older videos all over again, sort of give new ideas or fresh takes on what has transpired. So be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.